Hi, I'm Michael Lahoda, and you're watching After 24. And today with me we have Alexander Curie, who's a journalist at the Kyiv Independent. Welcome,
hmm
Alex.
Thank you for hosting me.
Welcome. Thank you for coming on. Um, few questions for you. We'd like to start with a little bit about yourself.
hmm
And you're not originally Ukrainian. You're not actually from Ukraine. You don't have much like attachment to Ukraine in terms of your family history or anything like that. Could you tell us a little bit about why you came to Ukraine and what made you stay?
Sure. So, yes. Well, first, I'm French. I'm from Paris originally. So I arrived in Ukraine in 2016 after getting my journalist diploma. Why now and why not 2014, for example? Because I actually was still studying journalism in France at the time, but I was closely following the Euromaidan revolution and all the events that unfolded, the Russian invasion at the time, etc., etc. You have to take into account that for a young person, and I think that was the case for most people of my generation, at least in France. There was something quite inspiring, I would say, seeing this revolution unfolding and how it went. Of course, still a lot of reforms to do, and especially those reforms are stalling because of the war. But this is, it was the first time in recent history when a revolution actually, worked. And when it ousted Viktor Yanukovych, it was actually quite impressive. And that's why, the harsh response of Vladimir Putin at the time was actually extremely shocking. Um, so I followed this quite closely from afar. I was one of my first assignment actually in my first internship at French television was about the humanitarian crisis in Donbass in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
But I was quite frustrated because we received images from AFP, but the problem is that it was really focused on something, and I was frustrated not seeing what was happening behind the scene. It
Yeah.
was lacking context, and it was lacking context. And I was lacking understanding. So that's why the first thing I did in 2016 when I had my journalist diploma, it was actually the 6th of June 2016. I remember it quite well. Coming to Ukraine that day, and having this feeling, didn't read any Cyrillic at all. Arriving the first 5 minutes, like, what am I actually doing?
That'd be hard to
Was
get
it?
anywhere not knowing any
Yeah.
Cyrillic.
So obviously, I got scammed by the taxi at the airport. I mean, that's the classic,
Classic.
classic first.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome to Ukraine, indeed. And then, but my idea coming in 2016 was to go to the front line because I wanted to be a war journalist. And at the time, if you remember well, there was two massive war happening. 20 Ukraine and Syria. Syria is a bit of a bit tough to begin with. So I also want, also, as I said, always wanted to come to Ukraine, also discovering Eastern Europe. That's, I would say, that's the contextual reason of my arrival to Ukraine. Now, why did I stay? Because I quickly understood that to understand what was happening in Ukraine, the ramification and the issues between Russia and Ukraine, actually, between Russia and the rest of Europe and the rest of the world, I had to stay. I had to stay longer.
Yeah.
And it happened that after a few trips to Donbass at the time, and following a few units there on the front line, I happened to so Peter Dickinson, who is still the editor in chief of Business Ukraine, proposed me a job at UATV, my first real job at the TV, and that's
Great
more or less
place.
where we met, actually, because at one point Mishko was my editor at UATV.
Good times.
So good times indeed. We learned a lot.
Did we ever?
Yes, we did. We worked. Actually, we worked a lot. I mean, we've not a lot of budget, of course, but we worked a lot, and I did learn a lot. And it was really the beginning of my career. So that's the work-wise reason. Now, for deeper reasons, I always thought that Ukraine is very unique when it comes to its own conscience of history. Ukraine makes its own history. It is a country with history in the making, so to speak. During its revolution, actually writing down its own destiny, in real time. I mean, I'm from a country where our history is our legacy. Like, we used to be an empire, we used to be whatever, and we tend to focus on this identity, but it's a thing of the past, to be entirely fair.
Yeah.
This is not the case with Ukraine, and Ukraine is still continuing, especially now, continuing to shape its own history, to shape its own identity, and being the witness of that. And sort of, yeah, I think being the witness and being a journalist actually also makes you write sometimes articles that may become historical documents, right? I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about it, but everything that happened on February 24 will go down in history and as important pieces to understand what happened at the time. So this sort of two temporalities mixed with each other, the short-term journalistic temporality with the long-term historical one, I think that's quite a fascinating and important task, I believe. These are a few of the reasons.
Yeah.
Other than, of course, I have my fiance now, I have my life now here, so that's another layer. So multiple layers, really.
So you mentioned what happened on February 24th. Could you tell us a little bit about what it was like to be in Kyiv? You were in Kyiv.
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about what it was like up to February 24th and then the sort of reaction to what happened?
Well, you have to, or at least the audience has to remember that those tension and Putin bringing troops near the border, it actually began in April 2021. So this sort of tension was mounting since April 21. Then we had, in November, there was another push. So it was beginning to be fairly obvious that there would be an invasion, right? And we were feeling that. And I remember we had in the Kyiv Independent newsroom, we had a talk about what we're going to do. I mean, the very same week, we have every Monday, we have those newsroom briefing, yeah? And we were like, okay, so if Kyiv's getting bombed, what do we do? But at the end of it, it was more like on a voluntarily basis. There was no judgment. It was like, okay, if someone wants to go west, needs to go on the western part of the country or needs to leave the country. There was no judgment at all. It's just like, so everybody.
It's important to keep people who are like have the guts to stick around to like actually, But if you don't have the stomach for it, probably you might.
I don't think it's a question of stomach, to be entirely honest, because and again, I don't think you can't really judge people who left the country at that time.
No,
at that
of
point,
course not.
And you can't really judge the country, and I don't think it makes much difference if you were working into basically defending Ukraine in your own way.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a very good journalist, and it's going to be if it's safer for you to be out of the country. Let's say your background or your family makes you a target. Better be out of the country rather than in Ukraine, because obviously you're going to be the first apartment visited if Russians are invading. So I mean, being a journalist already makes you a target. Put your targets on your back towards when it comes to Russia. But the point is that it's everyone's personal choice. And what happened for us is that we were seeing it coming. We didn't know when, but we were seeing it coming. And then, the fated night of February 23rd, I don't know a lot of colleagues that slept a lot that night, to be entirely honest. We were all woken up at like 4:30 /5, with bombings. I used with my little experience of the front line, there is something quite, I would say, if I may use this word, traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a bit of a big word, but because the front line, you're supposed to hear that kind of sound. You know where you go, you're prepared psychologically to go there, and you're prepared to hear bombings. When you wake up
at
home in your city, in your apartment, and you hear those noise, Like that, there is this cognitive dissonance that is actually at first quite hard to grasp, and there's this feeling of irreality at the very beginning, you know. And then there's like, okay, so what do I do now? Now I'm saying it in a very quiet way, calm way. Trust me, it wasn't the case at all. Like I was panicking indeed. I was panicking, but I also decided to stay. Um, well, first to stay in Ukraine, also to stay in Kyiv. I stayed like a week and a half, because I thought it's sort of, you know, sort of my duty, at least to stay in Ukraine anyways, and to stay in Kyiv and to cover what's happening, because again, it's history in the making. And if there's no one on the ground saying what's happening, well, then I would have failed to my duty and to my work and
Yeah.
to the country I love, really. So yeah, I had to stay.
So, how do you how do you find it keeping objective in your profession as a journalist while still being attached to the country that you're working in?
So first, I believe that it might be a bit of a controversial opinion, but I believe that neutrality is a fantasy, and I believe that when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, the two sides, and when it comes to information, the two sides are not equal. Like the propaganda of the Kremlin is not equal to basically what's really happening on the ground.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Kremlin is just lying all the time. So basically, if you take the opposite of what the Kremlin is saying, it's closer to the truth, right? But so at the end of the day, those two words are not, you know, worth the same. So that's why I have an issue with certain journalists who want, or certain media who absolutely want to put and to frame certain headlines or article, like the Kremlin says. Well, but you know for a fact that the Kremlin's telling bullshit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you call yourself a journalist, you just straight up go to the point and, you know, basically tell what's happening. Now, I'm coming back to this neutrality thing because I think you should reach toward objectivity, but I believe it's something different than neutrality. And it is important to also know your own bias, because I know that I'm attached to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. I know I'm covering the war from the Ukrainian side for many reasons. I wouldn't be able to go to the Russian side, or I would, you know, basically
they
probably
not.
They wouldn't let me there, and if they let me there, I would probably not have a fun time there. So the point is that if you know your own bias and you sort of assume your own bias, I think it's fine, and you can say, okay, like basically I'm biased that way, but I'm also gonna work as much as possible to sort of overcome it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to take into account, because at one point, Ukrainian and maybe some Ukrainian military may be guilty of war crimes. I mean, there was an investigation by the Kyiv Independent recently about the International Legion and about abusing the International Legion. So my colleague Anna Mironiuk and Alexander Rebet did this really amazing investigation. And we were at first afraid of the backlash, because we were like, okay, we are criticizing during a wartime, we're criticizing a unit in the International Legion. What is going to be the reaction there?
Yeah.
You know, and actually the reception was overwhelmingly positive. Why? Because if you're in a democracy, mm-hmm. if you're in a country where actually freedom of the press exists, you have to be able to hold authorities accountable. Mm-hmm. If tomorrow we find out that this general or this general is accused of embezzlement, you have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm saying we, as the Kyiv Independent, published this investigation, and we had no issue after that whatsoever, at least from authorities, because Ukraine knows. I mean, Ukraine's weapon right now is transparency, is press freedom. Compared, like, that's the idea of actually playing the complete opposite card that Russia plays. So we're lucky enough to be in a country where most of the time, I mean, I'm saying most of the time because it's also a touchy topic. I mean, before the invasion of February 24, there were massive issues with some journalists being harassed, being beaten up. We all remember the case of Gary Gongaze, who was found in 2000 in a wood near Kyiv, decapitated.
Yeah.
We remember the case of Pavel Sheremet, who was killed in 2016, and we still haven't found the people behind it. Still haven't found. So no one was officially indicted as sort of the people who gave orders. So it's an imperfect press freedom, but at the very least, this country is working towards it, which is not the case in Russia.
All right. In Russia, they recently announced mobilization.
Mm-hmm.
It was labeled as a partial mobilization, but if you read into the law, is that the right word?
Yeah.
The law that was published, there basically weren't many limits into it. Seems that they're mobilizing people out of jails, like criminals, inexperienced citizens. What are your thoughts on that?
So, two things here. First, the recruitment of convicts by Prigozhin, close to Putin and the head of the infamous Wagner group, paramilitary group, started before the partial mobilization. And we saw the videos of Prigozhin basically saying to convicts, well, basically, you will die here, better die there. Like it's a very Russian way of seeing things. But you're gonna die in prison anyway. You might as well be a hero, so
a
to speak.
hero, yes.
So to speak. So it's. I mean, it is a very Wagner-like policy of recruiting convicts, recruiting extremely brutal people. I mean, they're known for torturing people. I mean, they also play with this mythology of fear around them, like Chechens, actually. Kadyrov's Chechen. So that's a little bit of a different story. But when it comes to the partial mobilization, indeed, we don't know the exact number, and I think it's going to be. I mean, if Russia does the same as it already did with its sort of professional army before, which is using a unit, so sort of cannibalizing, so to speak, a unit. So you take people from this unit, and people from that unit, and bring them all together.
They have no cohesion.
First, they have no cohesion in a unit where you have hipsters from St. Petersburg on one side, and in the same unit, a guy who was convicted of cannibalism in the very same St. Petersburg. So
where's our filtered coffee, and the other guy's looking for body parts?
Yeah, so not the same kind of let's say education, not the same kind of people, and the problem is, like, when it comes to cohesion, and you also need people who actually believe in this war or believe into fighting. Ukrainians believe into defending their lands. I highly doubt that today the one who's forcibly drafted from this partial mobilization, or the guy who's out of prison and who's trying to make some bucks before basically coming back in some body bag, is highly motivated to fight here. So
yeah.
That's the cannibal part that disturbs you. Yeah, I know.
That was accurate. Disturbing, but accurate. Based on the mobilization, we've seen a lot of protests spark up in Russia. It's kind of funny because as the war broke out, people were pretty silent about it. It seemed that it doesn't seem a big deal to them that a war is breaking out between their country and another sovereign country. But the second they start getting mobilized, you're seeing a lot of protests. Some people are claiming that these are anti-war protests. Some people are claiming they don't know what it's about. So could you enlighten us about what is happening in
Yeah.
right now?
So a couple of things here. One shouldn't overestimate the sort of nationwide anti-war thing. It's not the Russian people waking up. We're talking thousand here on a country in a country that, if I'm not wrong, has 146 million people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it's not a lot. And also when you see images of the protests, I'm gonna come back to the images of the protest. But the issue here, as you said, is that it isn't. These are not anti-war protests. These are, let's say in Russian, mobilization, which is a play on word between basically grave and mobilization,
Mm-hmm.
anti-mobilization, anti-being killed during the war. So just to be clear, it is fine that starting 8 years ago, really, a country annexes well, Russia annexes Crimea. I remember the same exact Russian being quite happy about the annexation of Crimea. Yeah. I remember them turning the blind eye on what happened in 2014, because in 2014, the I hate saying that word, so I'm just going to use it with air quote. Militants or separatists. These were not militants or separatists. Donetsk and Luhansk region were taken over by FSB agents, and basically these were Russian put in place there since 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been 8 years they've been here. We have to stop calling them separatists. We should have stopped calling them separatists in 2014. That is already a first point. Second, so that was fine, right? Crimea was fine. 2014, Donbass was fine. In full-scale invasion in February 24 was fine. Bucha was fine. Mariupol is fine. But wait, if I have to get my hands dirty, no, I'm not going. Fuck that. What is that kind of attitude? Like, if you are there is something that exists, which is collective responsibility and collective guilt. And if Russia doesn't face it, if Russians don't face it, well, then they're missing the very point of sanctions against them. They're missing the very point of the tourist visa ban, because it's for them to understand that they are, in a way, responsible. Putin rose to power by himself. He's been there for 20 years because some people turned a blind eye over these elections. And now they wake up because basically they're the ones who are supposed to go to the trenches, fight for something they allegedly don't believe. Well, then what stopped them from continuously protesting since February 24th?
Mm-hmm.
I really don't believe that the Moscow, St. Petersburg elite, so to speak, that are actually, more or less waking up right now, don't have VPN. I don't believe they don't have access to other information. And even if they don't have access to other information, it's not like Kremlin's TV propaganda showed images of Bucha saying it was fake. So at the end of the day, you have access to these images. You know what's happening in Mariupol. You know what's happening in Bucha. But no, I'm not going to bat an eyelid on that, because you know what? I'm okay with my own comfort. Now, I think the main point is that there is indeed a sense of collective responsibility. Russians do have to face it today, and the very fact that the first reaction towards that is, oh, how to break my arm, which basically happened, looking for how to break my arm. If you want to break your arm, just go against the OMON. Just go against your own country. Just be productive in your revolt, and the problem here, and the main issue, and I think it also one of the main issue is basically the first reaction is going to be, I'm going to flee the country, or I'm going to break my arm by myself. We're talking a population of 146 million, right? I know we can hardly compare what's not really comparable, and of course Yanukovych was not Putin, but, and it's a massive one, you don't do with the revolution while filming people getting arrested, which is basically how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at what's happening in Iran right now, these women have way more courage than the so-called ordinary Russian, yeah, because unfortunately, and Ukraine saw that through the Euromaidan and people killed during the Euromaidan. Unfortunately, I'm not saying that a revolution should come with like killed people. It's because of repressive power, but unfortunately, it does require more courage than just being sat on your ass while filming people getting arrested. So I don't have the magic recipe to wake them up, but at the end of the day, I think the West should be careful into sort of praising too easily Russians who are fleeing the country at the moment, because also, again, fleeing mobilization, it is not post-political persecution.
Mm-hmm.
These are two completely different things here. So granting asylum to, under the guise of political persecution, to Russians fleeing the mobilization, okay, what's going to happen when these same Russians arrive in countries where Ukrainians are? How are they going to explain to Ukrainians that, oh, no, we didn't wake up on February 24 because it was fine? And how do you see that both of this population coming along in European countries? I hardly see that personally. I hardly see that. And again, I would not be surprised, and I will not be surprised if once they're in safety, we're back into this Slava Rossiya bullshit. We're back into like, oh, you know what, like we're strong and stuff like that. Well, yeah, it's easy to do that when you're in freaking safety, you know? This sort of like really imperialistic mindset at the end of the day. So I believe we should be careful. Like until I'm sorry to say that, but like until Putin is out, I don't really see anything good happening in this revolt, so to speak, or protest, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for the insights.
I mean,
so we can swing back to Kyiv
sure.
Independent.
Yeah.
I know that the Kyiv Independent recently released a book on the topic of what was happening leading up to, during, and the sort of aftermath of the war in Ukraine, Russia's war in Ukraine. Could you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, the book is I guess you would call it an anthology of compilation of articles. So separated in themes, right? So the first theme is like before the war, the preparation, and we see the war happening, during the war when the war erupts, and after the war, what may potentially happen after Ukraine's victory. Now, those articles were written between, well, I mean, the authors, because we worked with two authors, Frédéric Ploquin and Maria Poblete, who are also journalists in France. And they chose that articles over the span of a few months, basically. So, of course, the situation may change, but that's and they translated in French, so the French audience could actually read us. But that's for the, let's say, article part. Now, I think I believe what's interesting in this book. I was already thinking about the movie. Very ambitious. Is that in between they asked every journalist who wrote these articles to tell them about their emotions, their doubts, what they went through, their trauma sometimes, what they went through since February 24 and even before. So we have the example of Anna, for example, whose family was in Bucha, so she couldn't really quite write about Bucha. Just everyone involved in this newspaper. And I think it's interesting because journalists talk a lot about other people. By definition, it's our job to, sort of erase ourselves behind the topic, not rewriting at the first person, but at the third person, and put, other people before us. And it's sort of a cathartic exercise to actually, write about our doubts or about our emotions, and it gives a glimpse into the psyche of journalists, because sometimes people, and I think it's fair, that people who don't necessarily, or are not necessarily in the work or in this job, don't really necessarily understand what kind of dilemma we're facing sometimes, and it offers sort of this glimpse into the psyche of journalists working in the country at war, some facing more risks than others, But yeah, at the end of the day, it's I think it has this sort of human component that is sometimes could be sometimes missed in other books about Ukraine. So yeah, I think the editor and the co-authors, and of course other journalists at the Kyiv Independent did a great job for that. We don't know yet how it has been sold and all that. Yeah, we just hope for the better. But I mean, symbolically, the very fact that we have a book out, especially about our newspaper, which DNA is deeply entrenched into independence. I mean,
Yeah.
words says it, but uh, I believe it was also important for us to convey this message. Yeah.
And what's the book called?
It's called. I mean, I got the title in French. I mean, the closest in English would be Diary of Ukrainian Resistance. Yeah.
Fitting title. All right, that's Alexander Carey. Thank you so much for coming and
Thank you for
discussing all
hosting
these
me.
topics.
Cheers.
Cheers. And more coming up on After 24.